Hello and welcome to my video lecture on using your PHP files to insert data from your data entry page. So here we have our index.php file. Hasn't changed a whole heck of a lot. We now have our require once command, which is bringing in our database PHP file, which is setting up our data pipe, if you will. From our PHP project to our database server. I've changed the submit button so it actually says display now, because that's essentially what's going on here. So that when it will when I refresh this anyway. I think, oh, there you go, I didn't save the changes. So let me go back out here and now I refresh that. So there's my display. Just put that back on phone for a moment. So here's my data entry page for all intents and purposes. And then here's my display page. And what I did on my display page is one, I'm using a naming convention, because now that we're going to start dealing with putting data into the tables, things get a little confusing. So here, since I am pulling my information out of my post array and I'm putting it into local variables, I'm using a prefix for my local variables to make sure I know that this is information that I got from the post array. The first thing that I'm doing is just to make sure that everything worked the way I want it to work and that these variables now have the right data in them, is I'm just echoing that out in my PHP section of my code, and I'm putting a little space in between each of the values. Then I've got my HTML section, and here I'm doing my first data display page at this point. And what I'm doing is I'm using some labels and some spans, and again, once again, I'm pretty much doing the same thing I'm doing up here. I'm echoing out the values just to make sure I've got what I'm looking for. So to test that, all I have to do is hit display, and here's my first data display page. Here are all my values up here, and here are my values displayed. So I know that I am sending data properly from this page to the other page. So now the next thing that I want to do is I want to insert that data into my database table. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to change this from display to insert. That makes a little bit more sense. Save that. I'm not going to go changing the name of this file right now. It's display PHP. I'm just going to leave that. I will, however, change this to be my first data / insert / display page, because that's really what it is. So I'm just going to insert the data. I'm going to display it as it is here, but I'm going to use my PHP to insert the data. And then after this pops up and I don't have any errors, I'll go back and I'll look at it in the database. So the way we're going to do that is we are going to once again require once the database.php file. I was remembering my semicolons. So now I've set up my pipe. So now this file can now talk to the database. And I know that that works because I'm using that on my index.php. So if it worked here, it should work here. Unless, of course, my database crashed or something bad happened. So I'm going to require once my PHP, which is handling all of the exceptions. So hopefully that's going to work. I'm going to set up a query variable. And that is going to equal my insert statement. So I'm going to insert into, and if you forget, right, like a lot of people do, I'm going to go back and I'm going to insert into user info, right? So that's the table that I'm going to be inserting my data into. I'm going to insert into user info. I'm going to open up my parentheses, and now I'm going to list out the columns that I'm going to insert data into. Now, I am not going to insert into user info ID because that's an auto increment. So it's fname, lname, email, zip, phone. See if I can remember that. So fname, lname, email, zip, and phone. Unbelievable. Did I actually remember that? F name, L name, email, zip, phone. Look at that. Must be getting good. Okay, so those are the columns that I'm going to put values into. And then what I want to do is I'm going to put a line feed. So I got my continuation for me. And I'm going to put in values. Oh, don't need to put space there. Put a space in for me. So now I'm going to put in values. Now, since I'm putting in values, this is why I'm surrounding the string in double quotes, because it's going to substitute in the values that are in these local variables in my string. So here, I'm going to put in the string. So it's my $ PST first name, right? Surround that in quotes, so that's text data. So I have to put that in the single quotes. My last name is also string data, so PST underscore last name. So the naming convention helps because now I know this is data that I'm getting from my post array. The next one is going to be $ PST underscore email. Then it's going to be $ PST underscore zip. One of these days I'm going to learn to type, I swear. And then I've got $ PST phone. And I really don't need, I could put a semicolon at the end. I'm going to put a semicolon at the end here because that's my PHP. But you could also put a semicolon in here because this is an SQL statement. So this is the statement that I want run. I want to insert into user info into these 5 fields these values that I just got from my data entry page. So that's a variable that's storing a string. That's all query is right now. And now what I want to do is I want to access my DB. So my DB variable is available to me because I have done the require once. So database PHP has been pulled in here, and now DB is a local variable. And then I'm going to call the exec function of the DB object, which is my PDO object, and I'm going to have it execute that query and put my semicolon. So this should work. And so what's going to happen is if this runs without error and I get my values displayed for me, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to assume everything went properly into the database, and then I'll check it in the database. So I'm going to save all this. I'm going to go out to my first data entry page. This should be my first record. I'm going to click display, even though that's insert. I got no error messages. So now what I'm going to assume is that now I actually have values in my table. So now I'm going to go to browse and return an empty result set. So I'm going to have to work on that. And but that's the end of that video. That should have worked, by the way.